I wanted to talk about a video that I saw online, son. Dang. But hold on. Before I talk about this video, Ronnie, I was gonna enjoy a little bit of this purpley perp. Oh, yeah. Dang, son. I'm trying to have an easy night's sleep, if you know what I mean, son. Ooh, daddy.
It's a damn tough life full of toil and strife we weathermen undergo, and we don't give a damn when the gale is done how hard the winds did blow, 'cause we're homeward bound from the Arctic ground with a good ship taut and free. And we won't give a damn when we drink our rum with the girls of old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, me boys, rolling down to old Maui.
We're homeward bound from the Arctic ground, rolling down to old Maui. Here's how he starts out. He poses a question. He asked you, how do you explain how human beings went from hunter-gatherers of very small groups within a few thousand years to having big, massive city structures and urban life? How did we get non-related individuals to cooperate? Because you look at a termite colony, they're all sisters, Donnie. They're all literally sisters. So that's how they get them to cooperate. So how do human beings do it? And he basically says it's religion. Religion is how you get large groups to cooperate. Religion, as he describes, is uniting around a sacred object, in which gets the group emotionally invested in that object.
I'm screaming, thank you, Jesus. I'm hollering, hallelujah. You hear me talking by God, now tell me what's it to you. I'm in a Chevy Impala, I'm riding through the hood. I'm telling everybody that I see that God good. Oh, they looking at me, they like, is he for real? I let the window die slow and tell them, yeah, I is. It's amazing what God can do to a sinner and turn them all good, just like a chicken dinner.
Simultaneously uniting that group against groups that don't respect that sacred object.
I think it's wonderful that you have come here to place blame and guilt upon us. I think it's wonderful that you have reminded us just how base and vile that we are. And I think, sir, that Christ would be quite pleased with you.
And this gives them an evolutionary advantage in the competition of tribes.
All right, back to our story. It's amazing that we can cooperate and there's almost no violence. The only other animals that can do that are the Hymenoptera, and also termites, things like that. And so to me, the great miracle that I really tried to figure out in the last 10 or 15 years, I've really been focused on, is how do we go from hunter-gatherers to Babylon, in the space of just a few thousand years? I mean, it's unbelievable. It shouldn't happen. There's no precedent for that on this planet. Well, there is precedent in the Hymenoptera and other ultrasocial animals, but not for creatures that are not kin. But bang, we. I told you to stop fucking with me, didn't I? You think it's so bad, huh, nigga? At Babylon, we get Tenochtitlan. I mean, how did this happen? And I believe a big part of the story is our ability to make things sacred. If you all around the world, people express their religious feelings in somewhat similar ways. They tend to circle around sacred objects, literally circle. These are Muslims circling the Kaaba at Mecca. And when you circle, it's as though you pass a wire through a magnetic field and you generate electricity, you generate an electric charge. Durkheim used the metaphors of electricity, collective effervescence, when groups get together like this. It's not just religion. The flag is a sacred symbol of the nation. It's the same psychology. Nationalism and religion involve much of the same psychology. And this allows these men to circle around it and bond together and trust each other. But when we circle around sacred objects and we generate this electrical charge, this metaphorical electrical charge, it's as though it splits apart good and evil. We see the world in terms of good and evil, and we're good, they're evil. It's very difficult to get people to listen to reason when you have this sort of thing going on, which we all do. I just want to point out that once you take this perspective, that humans have this unique way of getting groups together, making them cohesive, and for what purpose? Why is it important to have a cohesive group? Right, to fight other groups. Because our ancestors have been fighting each other and cooperating too. But we've had this dynamic of intergroup competition has been going on for a couple 100,000 years at least, and in some ways for millions of years.
Johnathan Haidt has stated in previous videos that since people are not really rational, he has to sort of kind of gain their trust a little bit by giving them a compliment, sort of like the win friends and influence people kind of tactic. So when he's speaking to a bunch of leftists, he'll start out by criticizing the right to get the left to kind of listen to him, and then he'll come in with, by the way, you do the same stuff too, and the same thing with the right. And what I think he's doing in this talk, I mean the kind of the spin on this talk, is that the militant atheists, the rationalists who are deluded in an irrational belief, are kind of, he's basically criticizing them to get the right to listen to him, but at the same time then the right will be like, well, this guy's making sense criticizing the militant atheists as a bunch of assholes. But also that would also mean that, you know, a lot of the stuff that we do are kind of messed up too. So I think that he's trying to gain a wider audience through tactics, and before we criticize him for that, I think that's actually a good way to get your message across, because if you only appeal to one side, there's the sort of throw in red meat and you're going to have a barbecue. But if you want to really educate people and get people to think about their own prejudices and biases, you're going to have to sort of use tactics to try to get the other side to listen to you when they're normally programmed to filter out things that don't appeal to their side as an enemy thing. So I think using clever tactics to try to get a wider audience is actually a smart and noble pursuit, Donnie. Dance, social justice warrior. Uh-oh. Watch this. I want to launch it. Yeah. Boom.
So, you know, I'm a research psychologist. I don't get angry. I get even with data. So, the similarity among all these guys, with the exception of Dan Dennett, Dennett's a little bit different, but the similarity of most of them in their style was such that I thought, well, let me test this. Are they really more dogmatic than other scientists? So I took the full text of a bunch of books and I ran it through the Luke program, Linguistic Inquiry Word Count. Counts up words and puts them, it has, Jamie Pennebaker has validated with all kinds of different categories. And there were two categories that were a priori relevant. One was anger. How angry are they? The other was certainty. If you're fighting dogmatism, you should be open-minded, right? But if you're dogmatic, you're always saying, certainly it's the case. It's always the case. It's never the case. So for anger words, I took, so these are all the, this is the word count, the percentage of words in Sober and Wilson's book, Unto Others. Dan Dennett's book, so Dan Dennett, so he's a new atheist, but he's not angry. This is my book, The Happiness Hypothesis, and Scott. So books on religion, the anger rate in those books is relatively low. But now here we have Harris and Dawkins, much higher, and especially Harris. So that validates what we know. When you read it, that's what you hear. And just for fun, I thought, well, where would you put Glenn Beck and Ann Coulter and Michael Savage? And the answer is that Harris and Dawkins nestle right in among the right-wing ideologues. So their claim to be so open-minded, non-dogmatic is not doing so well. Let's look at the certainty category, and here the effect is even starker. And here actually Dennett joins the new atheists because he too uses these formulations. Certainly it is the case. It must be the case. It is always the case. That's not the way scientists talk, but that's the way ideologues talk. That's the way moralists talk. That's what our righteous minds do.
So apparently this weekend, some asshole named James Maxey went to a church and beat up the preacher. And James Maxey called himself a militant atheist, and he broke the preacher's nose and just beat the shit out of the guy. And look, folks, I don't speak for every atheist out there, but I do speak for a hell of a lot of them when I say, oh, hell no. This is bullshit. This motherfucker does not represent us. We are not like this. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll get up in your face in a heartbeat and tell you why what you believe is stupid, ignorant, and harmful to our society.
I think Haidt's point is a good one. He goes after, guys like Dawkins, Harris, who are sort of like leaders in a social movement. I see Dawkins not so much as a thinker, but as a cultural critic and an activist.
How does neo-Darwinism fit into that? Because isn't the whole principle of natural selection, which is at the heart of your worldview, isn't that amoral by definition?
Well, it sort of is, but it also provides the basis for humans to develop a morality. The golden rule, do as you would be done by, that actually does have a Darwinian basis, and it can work out that way. But we've moved on beyond that, and human civilization, human culture, has departed from its neo-Darwinian roots, and I welcome that. I've always said that I'm a passionate anti-Darwinian when it comes to the way we should organize our lives and our morality. I think we need to cut ourselves adrift from our Darwinian past as far as morality is concerned, sit down together and work out the best way we want to run our society, and not in a ruthless Darwinian way.
So are you arguing that natural selection no longer works for human beings?
Well, that's a different argument, and I wasn't actually arguing that, but I do think that we can certainly, as I said, cut adrift our morality, our politics, our the way we order our society, and positively depart from a Darwinian way of doing things. A Darwinian way of doing things, I think, would be a very nasty way of doing things if we took it literally.
Yeah, nasty, brutish, and short.
Exactly, yeah.
For human life. You know very well that some of the early fascist doctrine was very much informed by a Darwinian view of the world. The survival of the fittest, the strongest will prevail. You can't deny what the caller was saying, can you?
Well, I can certainly deny that it was properly understood. Do you know how many times the name of Darwin is mentioned in Mein Kampf, for example?
Probably not at all.
Not at all. Darwin, I mean, Hitler had clearly never read Darwin, clearly never understood Darwin.
Yes, but he was influenced. I mean, I have read Mein Kampf, and Mein Kampf is all about struggle and the will to prevail and the will to survive and the life force.
Before the break, if you remember, I was decrying that idea in human. I was saying that we want to escape from that. That's precisely, in a way I should say, indeed I have said, that we might learn about Darwinism as a way of learning what not to do in our own society.
If religion serves people so poorly, wouldn't you assume that natural selection would have selected out the religious propensity?
Well, I'm not sure it serves people poorly in the sense that what serving people well in the Darwinian context means is having lots of children. That's all it means.
And having those children survive and
having them survive to have more children.
Correct.
They survive to have more children. So it wouldn't be at all surprising if all sorts of things that we wouldn't necessarily consider desirable were favored by natural selection. That's why I keep saying we want to escape from natural selection. We want to avoid basing our society on Darwinian principles, but we cannot avoid basing our understanding of the living world on Darwinian principles, because the fact is, the evidence is, that life on this planet has evolved by Darwinian means, like it or not.
All right,
I think there's two things wrong with what Dawkins is saying in that video, or in that, and he wants to base his
It works.
bitches.
a society on anti-Darwinian principles. And by this, he means equality, the rule of law, civil liberties, that kind of thing, freedom of speech. So what he's saying is that even though all of our biology is guided to behave in a certain way, he wants to reject that because he wants to embrace a system of ethics in which he has no scientific proof for. Yet at the same time, he's just decrying people for basing their lives on things that have no evidence. How are you going to discover using science that it's better to tolerate gay people than arrest them? And I mean, you can't really discover that in a microscope. That's based on philosophical considerations, personal psychological preferences, and the type of society you grow up in. Dawkins constantly criticizes religious people for, well, if you would have been born in India, you would likely be a Hindu. If you
Not a Hindu. Why aren't you a Hindu? Because you happen to have been brought up in America, not in India. If you'd been brought up in India, you'd be a Hindu. If you were brought up in Denmark in the time of the Vikings, you'd be believing in Wotan and Thor.
If you had been born in the Islamic world, you would most likely be a Muslim. And if you are born in a secular Western society, you're likely to believe in equality and the rule of law and stuff like that. That's just it's just one system of many. And are you saying that system is objectively better, even though you admit that it goes against our inherited biology? I don't think Dawkins is even aware of the kind of claims he's making. He's just not that, he's not that self-aware. And I think what Haidt's pointing out is that social criticism and activism and a group mentality comes from our biology, just like religion comes from our biology. And it's part of an instinct that motivates us to cooperate and also to compete against other groups. And I think he's pointing that out. Now, my question to Haidt would be, if all this is true, then what's the point of pointing it out? The title of Haidt's talk is The Rationalist Delusion in Moral Psychology. And by that he defines it like this. He says that there is a belief among rationalists that you can attain an objective, rational position regardless of personal concerns, regardless of group pressure to believe a certain way, or when reputational concerns are at stake. And he says that that's a delusion because what we know from evidence is that people are not objective, and you can't be completely objective. He cites that a study in which if the emotive centers of your brain, the part of your brain that motivates you to feel, is damaged or taken away, you don't reason better. You actually become incapable of thinking, or if you still are able to think, you become somewhat of a sociopath. So he argues that motivation, emotion, is tied intricately with reason. He says that reason helps what you want. Reason is the sort of a servant to your bias. And it's like you tell reason, hey, reason, I'm part of this group and I don't like that group. Go find me a reason not to like that group. Go find me evidences and arguments to make that group seem like a bunch of assholes and pieces of shits. Dang, Ricky. Alright, so if that's what he's saying, that we can't be objective, then I wonder how he would view his own position. Would he say that his even the position that he's stating, is that a reasonable objective position, or is that also based on psychological concerns and preferences? Part of his biography, I've actually looked at him a lot. I like this guy. I like him as a thinker, so I've heard him talk in a bunch of different places. And he says that he used to be on the left, and he was motivated to get into psychology. Yeah, excuse me, Donnie. He was motivated to get into psychology because he liked Democrats and he hated George Bush, and he wanted to find out reasons why the Republicans were defective mentally or something like that. And in the course of him studying, how did we get morality? How did we arrive at religion? he came to realize is that the right and the left both have things that are good for sustaining a society, and that everyone thinks they're right, and that nobody's really objective. But I wonder if he would consider himself objective, because he seems to think that he has a true, or at least a mostly true or a better understanding than others. So that means that implicit in that is the argument is that you think it's possible, at least, to be more informed and more objective than other people. And I think he wouldn't deny that. But I think it's sort of a tension to point out that no one can be objective when that idea itself you're claiming is as objectively true. So I think there's some kind of tension there. I wonder how he would... I've never had this criticism put to him, because most people are not very intelligent, and he is up here, and people that interview him are a little bit down here, and the general public is down where my penis is. But I would like to pose that question to him and see how he responds to it. I think he would say there's probably something to that. He seems to be a very thoughtful person.